Donald Trump has been indicted on a fourth set of criminal charges. Prosecutors in the state of Georgia are accusing the former US president and his associates of meddling in the state's 2020 election. Now, the case stems from a phone call during which Mr. Trump urged Georgia's top election official to find him more votes. Mr. Trump is still the frontrunner for the Republican 2024 nomination. He's rejected this latest indictment, describing it as rigged.
Security was tight outside the courthouse in downtown Atlanta, where former US President Donald Trump faced his fourth indictment over his alleged crimes to overturn the 2020 election. This time in the state of Georgia, where prosecutors at Fulton County delivered their case to a grand jury, and the judge handing off documents to officialize the charges. A total of 13 felony charges were laid out against the former president and his associates, including lawyers and top aides.
Based on information developed by that investigation, a Fulton County grand jury returned a true bill of indictment, charging 19 individuals with violations of Georgia law arising from a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in this state.
The 97-page document details dozens of acts to undo Trump's defeat in the battleground state of Georgia, including election fraud, racketeering, and violating the oath of office.
Excuse us.
Among those indicted, Trump's former attorney, Rudy Giuliani, White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and former Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark. The document refers to the defendants as a criminal organization, accusing them of other crimes including influencing witnesses, computer trespass, theft and perjury. The case stems from a phone call in 2021 where Trump urged Georgia's election official Brad Raffensperger to find enough votes to reverse his loss in the state. Raffensperger declined to do so.
Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
But Trump denies the charges and calls the case against him politically motivated. On his Truth Social platform, Trump said the indictment was a witch hunt. This is the fourth indictment targeting the prospective 2024 Republican nominee. Trump's already been charged in 3 separate cases over allegations for election interference, hush money paid to a porn star, and hoarding classified documents. But unlike the federal prosecutions he faces, Georgia is a state case, which means Trump won't be able to pardon himself if he's elected as president.
All right, let's get some analysis from Dominic Tolsdorf, a US policy expert with the German Council on Foreign Relations here in Berlin. Hi there, Dominic. Now, this is Donald Trump's fourth criminal indictment, isn't it? Can you tell us what's different about these latest charges?
Yeah, good afternoon. I think the difference here is really, as you have also mentioned already in your reporting, that this case is on the state level, in contrast to the cases brought in by prosecutor Jack Smith lately. So in contrast to these, it's on the state level and not on the federal level. And as you mentioned already, if Donald Trump is indeed found guilty and if he becomes president again, he would not be able to interfere in the process and pardon himself. And I think also the other difference is that these cases, also in contrast to maybe the case in Manhattan, that the indictment is much more severe, or the charges against Trump are much more severe than in the case of the Manhattan state case.
OK. And in this indictment, some of Trump's allies and closest advisors are also facing criminal charges for their roles in this alleged attempt to overturn the election results. Do you think that the prosecutors are hoping that some of these advisors, allies, could possibly turn on Trump during the trial?
I think that's the assumption of the district attorney. I think he also hopes that they will actually ask to start the trials rather early, and that he could find somebody in this group of 19 people who will be actually who would be willing to cooperate with the court and the prosecutor.
OK. Now, the latest indictment includes charges of racketeering, which are often used to convict mafia bosses in the US. How will something as serious as this affect Donald Trump's standing in the Republican Party? I mean, will it affect his standing, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the racketeering was the surprising element of the case brought or the charges brought against him, and it's a very strong measure, and it can include prison sentences in the end. So yes, it would have very severe consequences for Donald Trump and all the other people that have been indicted. But I do think that in the end, it won't have much influence on Donald Trump's support within the Republican base. We know that he has a lot of loyal supporters among his Republican base. But then, of course, we also know that the Republican Party itself is split, and that the leaders, especially in Congress, try to get rid of Donald Trump, but they don't find the means for that. But yeah, I think in the end, it won't diminish his chances in the upcoming primaries, and also in the end, being nominated as a candidate for the Republicans in the presidential elections.
OK. Trump is calling these charges rigged, a witch hunt. Can you tell us briefly, if you can, how what will his lawyers' defence strategy be? How will they defend him against these charges?
I think the first step will be of his legal team to move the case to federal court system, which would give him some advantages. As I mentioned earlier, and as you also mentioned in your reporting, if he's tried on a federal court system, that means he could eventually also pardon himself if he becomes president again, and it would have a lot of advantages over the state court level, where in the end, if he is found guilty, there's not much he can do about it. And I mean, eventually we could even see a scenario where he's found guilty and sentenced to prison sentence as a sitting president. And the United States has never had that situation before. And of course, it would involve a constitutional crisis, and nobody really knows what would happen in practice if that were really to happen.
Extraordinary times. Dominic Tokstor, thanks so much for your analysis there.
Our Washington correspondent Janelle Dumoulin told me what stands out about this case from all the others.
Well, what really stands out here is that Donald Trump and his co-defendants have been charged under the so-called RICO Act. So this is the Racketeering, Influenced and Organized Corrupt Organizations Act. So basically, the idea is that you take a whole host of crimes committed by different actors in furtherance of the same goal. And applying it to this case, the idea is that Donald Trump and his allies committed a whole host of actions in order to overturn the results of the Georgia 2020 election, in order to be able to obtain the goal of Trump maintaining the presidency. Now, what is, of course, different about this case is that, unlike the other cases, it is a state case and not a federal case. So all those scenarios that we have with Donald Trump winning the presidency and potentially getting the Department of Justice to dismiss the charges and maybe even being able to pardon himself if he is in the White House. That is something that he will not be able to do in Georgia because there's no federal jurisdiction. As such, that means that, for a case like this, it carries a penalty of 20 years in prison. And Trump and his co-defendants have plenty of reason to be nervous.
What will Trump's defense be, do you think?
Well, from what it looks like at the moment, we're not quite sure, but there is reason to believe that he and his co-defendants will say that they did not know they were committing a crime. But he has certainly been adopting the posture that he has been adopting in his past cases, which is basically to say that the Biden administration is targeting him unfairly. He is being unfairly targeted in order to prevent him from getting the presidency. He has been slamming the district attorney in Georgia, Fani Willis, saying that she's partisan, that her allegations are fabricated. So this is something that he is also going to try to do. He is going to continue to use his legal troubles as evidence that that he is the target of a witch hunt.
Janelle Dumoulin, thank you very much for the analysis there from the US. And DW reporter William Glucroft told me how this case fits in with the laundry list of other charges Trump is facing.
Well, it's of course not great because as we just heard from Janelle, it's both state and federal level indictments and cases, and these have to be approached by his lawyers in very different ways. And as we also heard from Janelle, the state level means he can't really be pardoned from this if he were to win or an ally were to win. Another interesting aspect is his co-conspirators in this and other cases. I've been reading some interesting takes from legal scholars who say one of the tactics here might be to try to turn one of these conspirators from a conspirator, basically make him make a plea and then testify against Donald Trump. We don't know if that's really going to happen, but that could be one of the strategies here in not just charging Donald Trump, but charging a lot of his what is being called co-conspirators, smaller fish, in much the same way as you might go after a mob boss or the top guy in an organized crime syndicate. Get some of the smaller fish to turn to testify against the big fish and get the one you're really looking for. So there's a huge minefield, let's just say, for Donald Trump. He's got a lot of open cases while he's also trying to run a campaign for the 2024 election.
But could this new indictment change the fact that he's still number one in the Republican Party?
Well, so far we've seen that all news is good news for Donald Trump, and what doesn't kill him makes him stronger, if I can mix my metaphors there. His base loves him, right? This is not really the Republican Party anymore. This is the Trump Party. Any Republican that doesn't like Trump, it's not even clear if they're really Republicans anymore. It's not really clear what the Republican Party really is beyond Trump anymore. So it's probably not going to hurt him in the polls. But the question is, you can't win a presidency just with your base. You might be able to win a primary, but you can't win a general election. So are people who are not really big on all of this corruption allegations, everything going on, are people more generally going to vote for him? That's what Joe Biden proved in 2020 was possible. That's what Joe Biden hopes he's going to prove again in 2024, assuming he's the candidate, which he likely will be for the Democrats. And Donald Trump will have a very hard time convincing people outside of his echo chamber, outside of his base, to vote for him, even though, as we have noted and many other places note, he is legally most likely allowed to run and even win and serve, even as a convicted felon.
William Glucroft on the ex-President Trump and his Republicans. Thank you.